5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I followed it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the 281st episode of Rank and Review, good old modern cinema. It's been a while since we've heard from Erich Jurgens, a regular contributor to Rank and Review, and he had contacted me because he was very interested in one title in particular. And I didn't own that particular title, but I understood what he was talking about, this sort of idea of modern films being presented to us as if they weren't modern films, as if they were old-fashioned, dusty, forgotten relics of a different time. I don't know if I just haven't paid attention to it or if it's just starting to happen more often than we are used to, but it's kind of an interesting maneuver for Hollywood. It's really investing in the history of film in a way that I appreciate, because I don't think a lot of people think that deeply about cinema anymore. So this sort of suggests an appreciation for the art, and so we're going to talk about it. As usual, there's going to be spoilers and there's going to be coarse language, but if you've been listening to Rank and Review, I think you kind of understand how that works at this point. Please consider sending feedback to ranknreview at gmail.com. That's ranknreview at gmail.com. The website is ranknreview.ca. We do have a very small presence on YouTube that I would like to build. If you were to comment or like or subscribe or write your list of how you would rank a given episode beneath the episode, all of these things helps to get more traffic to the YouTube site. And you telling your friends about Rank and Review helps Rank and Review. So yes, please do your part to contribute to the growing audience of Rank and Review, and thank you as always for being here. If you need something to put in your ears in the 2-week gap between episodes, I recommend you check out the Shelf Shedding Movie Show hosted by Mr. Jason Dubray. And support podcasts, because they're a lot of work and they need that support. They need those listeners. Yes, so as usual, this is the voice of your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons. Now let's get into some good old modern cinema. You are being recorded, Erich Jurgens. You are officially on the record now. Dun dun dun.
Can I get a lawyer?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So this was kind of sort of your idea. We kind of split the difference on this list. But I'm calling this good old modern cinema is, I guess, what I wanted to call it, because they're mostly modern movies, but they're pretending to not be modern movies.
They're all movies that are evoking an era outside of when they were made. Because, unfortunately, the skeleton of Cadavra is a 2001 movie, which, God help me, is old now.
Right?
But it's evoking a time from even past that.
Yeah. And I think because of the specificity of the vision of these types of films, I think that their audience could be narrow. But the people who like them will probably like them a lot. So I'm just curious what brought you to this subject.
So, And I'm gonna say to your audience, I'm sorry I've been gone. I know we need we need my archetype in this podcast, and I've returned. And normally, how it goes with episodes where I come to you is I have one movie that I really want to talk about, and so I make a theme around that. For the musicals, it was La La Land. That's the obvious one that I can jump to. Oh, for the Rocky movies, it was Creed.
Right.
So for this one, we'll get to... Look, you'll know which one it is, because even after watching all these movies, it's still the top of my list. But one of these movies I was hankering to discuss with someone, and that brought this about.
I do seem to notice that a lot of genre filmmakers are obsessed with the past in a very overt way. Like... not Lucky McGee, the guy who did the X trilogy. Is it? Ty West. My brain is working slowly today. Ty West sets a lot of his horror movies in sort of very specific time periods. This movie feels very 70s, and we're going to shoot it in a very 70s way, and we're going to cast actors that give that very 70s vibe, and we're just going to give that to you in such a way that if you don't get it, that's just too bad, because we get it. So there's a little bit of art house, fragrance wafting into the room a little bit, but...
On one of these, a lot. One of these maybe overdid it.
Okay, fair. To be fair. But I do notice that, I don't know if it's because we're running out of ideas, but increasingly looking to the past and using the past as a map. Famously, Francis Ford Coppola using only period special effects for his Dracula. If they couldn't do it in 1933, they weren't going to do it in 1990. But you put yourself in a deliberate box, and you make your movie more deliberate and expensive a lot of the time by doing this. It's funny how the thing that used to be how you made your movie cheap is now incredibly expensive.
I think, yeah. Oh, and that's the case too. That just in general for visual effects, it's a thing that is such an expense, and it's ballooned the cost of AAA movies, and yet somehow I guess it's perceived as being cheaper than doing things practically. And I'll say, I don't think that visual effects are a vice or anything. One of these movies leans very heavily on visual effects in a way that I think most people would not find offensive. But yes, it's a thing where you'd look at it and you'd be like, intuitively, this is cutting corners, but once you actually get down to brass tacks, I think, so I was saying that, there's these things like, in most movies, I would argue it's visual effects, but in these movies, right, it's creating an aesthetic of this was before, our technology is newer, we have more experience, surely doing stuff like this must be easier or cheaper, and yet, when it comes down to brass tacks, the thing that feels like it should be cutting corners is overall adding to the effort and money. I will say, if someone has to be nostalgic for the past of cinema, I prefer this kind of thing of we're going to recreate it or give it our own twist, as opposed to this movie was old, so we're going to remake it because we can make it new. I'm not inherently against remakes if you have something new to say, but generally, and I think people get sensitive to this, generally, modern remakes of things aren't because there's something new to say or a different way to say it. It's because it's we could do this, but the monster could be bigger now. Yeah. Or RoboCop could shoot so many more bullets. The special effects will be super sweet now. And we can make it hipper and cooler and right now. I agree with what you're saying. I also think the specificity of the visions kind of narrow your audience. There's a little bit of a Wes Anderson effect to this level of production values. You're either into it and you take that ride, or you fight it right away and you end up just not liking the movie. It is interesting because I do think there's some overlap with some of these movies have more overlap on this case than others, but in general, almost all of them have a very different way they are trying to evoke the past. For example, Space Station 76 doesn't have a lot of grain or it's a full clear HD movie, but it recreates the cinema, the prop making, and even the early visual effects of let's call it Star Trek. It's basically the Star Trek aesthetic. Of that era of TV, for sure. Yeah. Whereas something like I guess the Lighthouse and the Good German are kind of share a piece where they are black and white and 4x3, but then Black Dynamite is completely its own thing. The Lost Skeleton is completely its own thing, and boy oh boy is Hundreds of Beavers its own thing.
Right. Well, and I feel the love in these movies. Like, I don't love all of the movies, but I feel that there was love poured into all of these movies. Even though, like, Black Dynamite was being highly satirical, it still manages to be a great movie. All right, so the 6 motion pictures that Erich Jurgens and I are hopefully going to get through to review today. We're going to talk about Hundreds of Beavers. Hundreds of them. We're going to talk about Space Station 76. We're going to talk about The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. We're going to talk about The Good German. We're going to talk about The Lighthouse. And we're going to talk about a blaxploitation satire called Black Dynamite. Thank you for being here, Erich. We're going to get through this together. I believe in us.
I do too. I don't know that we'll get through them today. This recording might take us past midnight, and then technically we'll be into tomorrow. But I do know we'll get through it.
I'm committed to making this happen. So Hundreds of Beavers is a really, really interesting number. Like, the idea of man versus nature, man versus, his environment, tale as old as time. And sort of the slapstickish, almost Bugs Bunny type of humor is got a universal appeal. Unfortunately, a lot of those old classic Bugs Bunny cartoons have not aged very gracefully. So this kind of modernizes that goofy aesthetic of animation and puts it into a, quote, photoreal cartoon called Hundreds of Beavers. I really like the movie, but there's a complaint I have about it that I will have about a lot of the movies we're talking today. It is one joke spread over the entire movie. And this is like 107 minutes. I think that 80 to 90 minutes probably would have been a more ideal runtime. But I'm not going to shame it for its, confident strangeness. I really appreciate a movie that's just absolutely willing to be out there and its own thing. You can't compare it to anything else. Like, I do think that it's going to get a reputation around it, and a deserved cult sort of body should form around it. Because, like the test of any true great comedy, there were several scenes where I couldn't believe what I was watching, and my face ached a little bit after the movie was over just from smiling. So, yes, I think you should watch Hundreds of Beavers, but be prepared that you're in for something really crazy and kind of long. It maybe overstays its welcome just a little bit, but that's where I start on Hundreds of Beavers. Where do you land on it?
It's interesting because you took a slightly different angle on something that I would comment on all of these movies, even the ones I love, is they all kind of have an overstaying their welcome problem. And I don't think a single one of them is over 2 hours. Like, These are decently tight movies. And even so, maybe with the exception of The Good German, all of them feel like there is some fat that could be trimmed. I will say, though, I'm going to let the cat right out of the bag. Hundreds of Beavers was the movie that started this episode for me.
This is why we're here.
And I was like, I need to share this. I need other people to appreciate this. I love this movie. I have seen it 5 times now, mostly through trying to show it to people with hits and misses. There have been people that have been like, I thought you loved me. Why did you make me sit through this movie? And there have been other people that have been like, thank you. This is great. Fewer of that second category than I would like. But I adore this movie. I absolutely adore this movie. And I think that There's another movie that I would absolutely brand with the you have one joke and you've well overdone it. The thing that I appreciated about Hundreds of Beavers is that, yeah, it has like the one joke. Like, you get this set up within, I'd say there's an opening intro. First of all, if you haven't seen it, don't let us spoil it for you. Pause this podcast, go watch Hundreds of Beavers, then come back, because there will be spoilers. And you shouldn't do that to yourself, because you should watch this movie. And if you can go in, like, it's not like, you're not going to be shocked. There isn't like a twist necessarily. It kind of is, but it's not that kind of a movie. But even so, going in as fresh as possible, understanding that it is going to be quirky, would do you well. And I do think, like, there's an opening number at the beginning that sets up the story, and then that's it. And then you have kind of your initial set of scenes, and I think after that set of scenes, at that point, if you're not on board, if you don't trust the movie, it isn't going to change.
Right.
I would argue, though, it does continue to move forward. The thing that Hundreds of Beavers does that some of the other movies that are monotonous don't do is that, yeah, there's kind of one joke. Like, it's kind of the, how do we fit this Hanna-Barbera, this Buster Keaton type comedy into this scenario? How do we up the stakes? But this movie is clearly made by people that grew up with video games.
Yep.
And I say that because it has, as much as it has its narrative structure, it also has, like, in-world mechanics and rules. And the rules aren't immediately obvious, but once you learn them, you can use them to your advantage. And you have this guy who is learning to fight against nature. And he's learning, even though he's lived in this world for his whole life, ostensibly, he's in a position where he does need to... It puts this character in a position to grow and learn with the world, and with that comes comes character growth, comes narrative growth, comes humor growth. And I do think one thing that I do appreciate is, like, it's a lot of the same kind of joke, but in terms of actual bits, they're very good about the first time they'll dwell on it. The second time, they kind of expedite it. The third or fourth time you're doing the literal same joke, it's like cutting to it really quickly because you know that you get it.
Yeah.
And I really think the payoff at the end for all of this is just so madly worthwhile. I love this movie. You go ahead and you share a bit, but I could. This whole podcast could be me talking about Hundreds of Beavers.
Just to point to the aesthetic, black and white, sort of static frame, minimalist dialogue, but animated clearly in a computer, but not in any kind of photorealistic way. But it doesn't depend on that kind of animation, too. I think a lot of the humor is just people in these big furry outfits not being able to walk and eating shit in snowbanks and falling over. Like, the very basic man fall down equals funny works for me a lot in this movie. I like that when they get killed, their eyes are replaced with X's, so we know that they've been killed and they can count them off in the score. And I agree with you. I clocked the video game aesthetic. Like, he keeps on doing this circuit, this route, but he gets better at his trapping and better at dealing with his obstacles and acquiring money and maybe seducing the girl at the trade station. And, like, we struggle with him. When he's cold in the dark, we want him to be warm. When he's mad at the Beavers, we want him to get revenge. But the ridiculousness and the way it sort of dogpiles crazy scenario on top of crazy scenario, and every time you think it's topped itself, it really hasn't. Like, what you say, when we have this sort of Beaver space program by the end of the movie, you're just like wide-eyed, gawking at, what am I looking at, sir?
You wouldn't guess that it was coming, but it also isn't a thing that comes out of left field. It's a thing that, weirdly enough, is not only established at the very initiating incident, but is also hinted at throughout the whole movie. And yet you get there, you're just like, what? What?
And weirdly violent non-violence. Like, they die like stuffed animal, but sometimes when they get hit hard, or they're like slow motion falling and there's like puffs of stuffing in the air, it's like, it gets weirdly kind of not real. I can't use the word real, but the violence becomes a little more serious.
There's a visceralness to it. There's a scene about midway, 2/3 through the movie where him and this beaver are struggling against a fan contraption he's made inadvertently, and they're both in it together. Like they're both like, oh gosh, we both would kill each other, but both of us agree that neither of us want to get chopped up by this fan. And what happens is the beaver gets struck, like the beaver gets noosed, and his neck extends, and it's cartoonish, but it's also like
horrible.
Like you go, gosh, ouch!
And it does kind of take you back to the Wile E. Coyote sort of sensibility, where the humor is cruel, and that is the point, but it is still kind of funny. The way nature itself seems fitted against him. When he puts his back to the fire one way, the wind will change its direction to try and put out his fire. Like, you don't really get a lot of access to the characters, and I think that's where the runtime starts to feel its length. Like, he gets better at being an outdoorsman, and he does start to get some payback on these beavers, but like, it rolls out in a kind of predictable fashion, in a way that you know what the next scene is after a point. You kind of get programmed into the movie. You don't know exactly what you're going to see, but you know the rules of the world in which you're playing in.
I think that it's both the blessing and the curse, because what ends up happening to the movie is like it's not the way you framed it. I would take like a little bit of issue. Like, I wouldn't want people to think that the movie's predictable necessarily. The problem is that it sets itself up, and you can kind of see the tracks being laid just for the next bend. And again, for me, it's self-propelling enough that it's not a problem. But there is the issue is that everything does kind of play into everything else. Like, I don't think a fan edit of this movie would work necessarily, because I don't actually think there's like a wasted scene in terms of this establishes this mechanic or this rule of the world, or like, you know, the fish will ignore a hook but they can't resist blood, you know, like these kinds of things all pay off. Like, even for myself, I'm not as big into scatological humor, and there are several scenes that if I were to cut for runtime, I would cut most of the poop jokes.
Fair.
But there's like wild stuff that it sets up. Like, there's again, spoilers, I don't know why you haven't watched this movie, pause the podcast. There's a thing there, he stumbles upon a beaver. It's not an outhouse, it's like a swing where the beavers, ostensibly, you don't watch them, but
right,
they go to the bathroom while on a swing, and they try and hit a target with their hoop, and he uses that knowledge to make a trap, and ultimately to he uses it in a way that, like, there's payoff later on. And so, like, yeah, I watched it a lot of times. I love it. I wouldn't try and argue that the runtime isn't very long, but I would say that, like, I don't think there's an obvious thing that you can cut, because it's so much more structurally intertwined than you would expect, even at first glance, I'd say.
Well, he just does several loops where he becomes a better survivor, and then he gets more rewards so that he can get more skills, so that he can be a better survivor, so that he can seduce the girl at the trading spoils, and then he finally levels up enough that he can truly fight these damn beavers. And that sort of circular engine of the middle of the movie does sort of, I mean, they change it every time he goes to the trading post slightly, but you're in that scene whenever you're there. But that's just a video game aesthetic, and it's not just this movie. I think that the generations of kids who were raised more on games than movies are starting to show their mark on the art form a little bit. Sometimes it's a negative thing. Sometimes it kind of works out. I'm, like, delighted with Hundreds of Beavers. It's just, like, nobody saw this movie coming, and, like, it feels like it could be an ancient relic, but it's a very modern piece of filmmaking. I looked up the director. He doesn't have anything up next in his review. I don't know if he's just keeping things close to the chest, or if he just gave this one gift to the world and decided, and if that's all he ought to give to the world, I am sitting here grateful. It's just so rare to be able to be so enthusiastic about a piece of original comedy, even though it sets its landscape in sort of this old-timey world. It is a very kind of modern movie in a lot of ways.
It's truly its own thing, even more so than any of these other movies, more so than most movies that I wager most people have seen. It's just so uniquely its own thing.
Hey! Oh, hi. Hey! Valium.
Powering up. Engine powering down.
You can't come and visit. You don't know about germs on fingers.
Who was it? Was it Larry?
You sad, pathetic.
Chill out! Really need to...
Oh, God.
Stop it! Enough!
I'm going to up your dosage of Valium to as much as you'd like.
Space Station 76. The aesthetic that's being rung here is sort of the retro future, sort of like what the 1960s and 1970s imagined the 1990s would look like. This sort of idea of the modern technology of the 1960s are going to express the future in a very sort of cheesy kind of way. I understand aesthetically the bell they're ringing very well. I grew up watching those shows unironically, you know, and just liking them straight up for what they were. What I think the movie runs into problem is where the aesthetic of the retro future design meets with the content of the movie, which largely has to do with interpersonal romance, repressed homosexuality, and sort of the stress of entering a relationship where there's a child from a previous coupling involved. All of the stuff that it's talking about is not particularly funny or approached in a funny way, and B, complemented necessarily by this faux sci-fi environment. I see what you're doing in this side, and I see what you're doing with the aesthetic. I don't see how they fit together into a movie. There are things that made me smile throughout the movies, and it's kind of got a strange, ballsy, what the hell energy to it. And like, I want to like it, I think, more than I do, but I'm kind of more mystified by Space Station 76. How does it have this cast? What was the goal? Like, I've seen it twice now, and I'm like, how am I supposed to feel about it? Is it a wannabe Wes Anderson in space? Or is it more than that? Less than that? I don't know. I wrestle with it. But me wanting to like a movie is not necessarily enough for me to recommend a movie. We live in a day and age where there's enough weirdo out there premised movies that I can sort of say, I don't know if this one is for everyone necessarily. It's a curiosity, but maybe just that. But talk me down.
Oh, whoops. No.
No?
I came in on this movie. Yeah, no, I'm in a very similar bucket. I came in on this movie so hot. Like, the first few minutes, I was like, oh, I love what they're doing with this aesthetic. I'll say this. I think a power glove is the funniest prop. I think just scientifically, there's nothing funnier you can put in your movie than a power glove in any context. And like, there's something to the amount, the consistency with how they are aping Star Trek, the original series. I think it is very specifically that, right? Like, it doesn't look straight out of the Enterprise necessarily, but I think that it's a little bit past like the 40s or 50s sci-fis that some other things where it's like, oh, look, my spacesuit is tinfoil, like, you know, that kind of a thing. It's not that. And honestly, like, the external shots really reminded me also of Star Trek The Next Generation, of like, we now have the ability to do digital things, but we don't have the ability to add like all the greeblies or the things that you would think of from like the era of models and physical things. You can have like so much little texture that it would have taken up too many polygons. So everything looks nice. And again, like, I think it's all aesthetic. I don't think anything in that movie looks different from how the director wanted it to look. And so, like, I start, and like they do such a good job of pulling you in, where you have this ship coming into a space station. The captain's getting a warning. It's unknown. He's looking at it. He kind of nods to himself, presses a button. There's a countdown. Cigarette lighter pops out. He lights the cigarette, and he goes, "All right, come on." And like, the irreverence starts you off on such a good note. And again, I really want to emphasize this to anyone listening. One of the guys has a power glove hand.
Yep.
It's supposed to be a mechanical robot hand, but he's just wearing a Nintendo Entertainment System power glove. And I love that. And then as the movie goes on, it does less and less with that. And I think, like, there's some okay characterization here. It's not that, like, it's a completely empty movie necessarily, but I would have taken... Like, it just doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't do anything with the aesthetic. I also think it kind of doesn't do much with the characters. I'd almost, like, my accusation of most of these movies is that you overstayed your welcome, even being, like, an hour and a half to just under 2 hours. This movie, I feel like, almost could have done with an extra 15 minutes where the events at the very end of the movie are a catalyst for the character change that all of the characters should go through. But, like, we start this movie with Marissa Collins' character, Misty, and she's like a trash person, and by the end of the movie, she's kind of like a lonelier trash person, but she doesn't really like either get some kind of just reward for it or get better. Like, nothing really changes. There's like the captain, and he's gay, but also everyone knows that he's gay, and so like it kind of enables him to start a probably inappropriate relationship with someone else on the station, but it's not really like, there's not much to that. He's
in
known
any other
just to be
situation, wouldn't there be like some peril or some adventure that they were thrust upon that made them sort of get out of their heads and refocus them on what was actually important?
For the whole movie, the asteroid is careening at the space station, so you think that there's going to be, there's going to be a danger or, like you said, peril. And what happens is the asteroid bumps the space station. Everyone's like, whoa, huh, what was that? And then they leave from their shitty Christmas party. And they, nothing really comes of it. And again, it's not to say that, like, this movie is entirely flat. Like, there are character arcs and there are development and there are narrative beats, but to no end, I would argue.
Well, and even making a comment on shows like Star Trek, which we're trying to be front-facing, but we're kind of clumsy about it. Remember, there's an episode where there's an alien race where the right side of their face is black and the left side is white, and then the other culture is really the reverse of that, and they have this race like...
Some of the speeches had stars.
Yeah, the lack of subtlety could be used for funny, but one of the things that they didn't touch on beyond, Spock and Kirk fan fiction was homosexuality. I think it was still a little bit too taboo of an issue to be straight-faced taken seriously.
They were like, we got William Shatner to kiss a woman of color. That's enough. If anyone needs more of us after that, what do you expect?
Cultural touchstone enough for now. Thank you.
Yes, exactly.
But it's just weird that it's specifically all of the sexual stuff that this one seems really to want to focus on, both the homosexuality and like the big naked space goddess in the sky that we have.
Like, I will say, so I'm a little inside baseball. So I first gave a set of 6 movies, and the ones that I was kind of like invested in was, I think, The Good German, Black Dynamite, and Hundreds of Beavers. Right. And then the other 3, I was like, I need to fill this list, and that's where you came in and contributed The Lighthouse and a couple others. But my original pick had something that I just looked up because I was like, what are some movies that are like newer movies that capture all this? And one of them was like essentially a softcore porn.
Right.
And at the time, that was one of the ones that you cut off, and I was like, yeah, that would have been a bit much. I don't know. I was just trying to, pad for like, and some of these movies, including Space Station 76, really made me feel like, nah, the softcore porn would have felt right at home with these. These are some horny flicks.
Yeah. They definitely are guilty of gratuity, but also just the whole movie being really preoccupied with sex. And again, that's fine, but that's just not the aesthetic that we seem to be playing in.
Yeah, there's just so many moments where this movie almost does something interesting or almost does something with stakes. Like, there's a child on the space station, and I'm going to say, by the end of the movie, I found all the characters so flawed to the point of being infuriating that I was rooting for the asteroid to just destroy the station, even though there's a precious child on board, because that would have been like then at least the message could have been like, hey, you never know, live your life, you know? But no, but like the most interesting stuff is all revolves around the daughter and how the mother uses her as like a trophy, how she is dealing with death in a scenario where and to the point I was saying before, like there's stuff to this movie. Like the captain, for whatever his repression, his guilt over his alcoholism, his missing his former lover, constantly tries to kill himself, and the space station just has all these bonkers security measures that won't allow him. And it's like, I think it's a funny joke and it's a very insightful. And meanwhile, there's this daughter who should be protected from death at this young age. And yet she keeps getting exposed to it. Her pets keep dying. That's basically it. Her pets keep dying. But there's also a scene, a single, or I guess it's two scenes, where she finds her dad's porno mags because her dad is very pent up for reasons. And I don't know, like, I felt a real pit in my stomach. I didn't know where they were going with it, but I was like, oh, this isn't good. This isn't good for this child. This isn't healthy. This isn't... And, like, maybe the point they were trying to make was that, like, she's just going to follow in her mother's footsteps and, like, become some weird trad wife or something. But I don't know because it never goes anywhere. Like, literally, she just finds his mags and goes, these ladies are what like ladies should look like, and like that's not a good feeling, and that's the start to saying something, but it's not saying anything.
No, and you don't get the feeling like as sweet as she is now, she could possibly stay that way, trapped in this box with all of these awful people. So like again, the vibe of it, the aesthetic is telling you that the movie's funny, but it's kind of not funny and kind of straight faced about like the stuff that's in it. I like Liv Tyler as an actress. I often thought that she's never really got that role to take her out to the next level. Same with...
this isn't it?
Yeah, no, clearly not. And Patrick, what's his name? Who plays...
Patrick Wilson. I will say, I found Patrick Wilson distracting because he keeps, especially with the mustache, he looks a lot like Will Arnett. And I found Matt Bomer distracting because he also looks a lot like Henry Cavill. And... I almost felt like I was looking at those actors' faces, but then getting Patrick Wilson's voice and Matt Bomer's voice. To what end, I don't know, but it was distracting.
Yeah. And again, impressive cast for this movie. It's just, it's every genre and it's no genre. It's funny, but it's not funny. It's tragic, but it's not tragic. It really just kind of sits there. I mean, it's interesting in that there's not another movie like it, but I also understand why there's not another movie like it.
And it's not like they're not trying to play in the same space at all. But I would say, like, I know it's a very obvious thing to compare it to, but Galaxy Quest is, I think it's saying more about the Star Trek fandom than it is saying about the genre. But it is saying something, and it says something strong. And this movie doesn't say anything really. Like, I mean, that's not entirely fair to it. I'm being maybe more down on it, but it holds so much more promise than it realizes, and it's not even fun to hate. It's just kind of boring.
Yeah, aesthetic can't be everything.
Aliens? Us? Is this one of your Earth jokes?
Risen. May God have mercy on us all.
You don't know the lost skeleton of Cadavra, but you will. You will.
Here we have before us a story of a filmmaker named Larry Blamire, Blamire, who managed to get his little passion project made. And I feel like, I want to support any filmmaker named Larry trying to do independent work. You get the feeling like maybe he watched too much really cheap 60s horror movies. Because I think the joy of Last Skeleton of Cadavra is the pain within it. One of my favorite comedies is Waiting for Guffman, the Christopher Guest community theater thing. There's a whole series of people giving auditions to be in the community theater, which I just find to be an absolutely terrifying thing to watch. It makes me want to hide under my chair. And that's what this Skeleton of Cadavra locks into. A movie that is bad, like through and through, but that is confidently bad. People making it don't know it's bad. The actors are like really committed to it, and it's just weird and goofy and strange. I said in an earlier review, like, my problem with the movie is that it's one joke, and that's all you have. And that is true. This movie is one joke. But if you have seen certain movies from the 60s, or the sort of weirder catalog of the Ed Wood corners of the world, you will recognize the aesthetic that they're riding and how perfectly they are riding it. Does it overstay its welcome? Arguably, yes. I mean, I will die for Animala. I'm a big believer in Animala. And just the weird, awkward takes that go on too long because it's just weirdly perfect. It's not something that's going to hit the machine a lot of times. It doesn't have the repeat business of even hundreds of Beavers, but I like where its heart's at. I like the goofy energy that went into making it, and I like the specificity of the vision. And unlike Space Station 76, I get what they're going for here. They're not making fun of these people or these movies. You can tell they love these movies. But yes, they're also laughing at them. What did you think of The Last Skeleton of Cadavra?
This might be where we split the most.
Uh-oh.
Much like Space Station 76, I came in on this movie hot. I loved the title sequence. I was in on like the first few scenes where they're establishing kind of their tone, their joke on. Yeah, they're riffing on they're both doing riffs on bad scripts, and also I think like maybe translated scripts, because there's something there that feels almost like it's dubbed. You know what I mean? Like the way people need to kind of fit the right syllables over old Japanese movies or kung fu, or like it has that feeling of just like not quite fitting right.
No.
And I was really into it, and this one is interesting because we can compare it to like Black Dynamite, where these are the two movies that are clearly through and through trying to evoke another era.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to sneak in like someone wearing a poorly made beaver suit into a facility of beavers. They're trying to sneak in like you could watch Shaft and then also watch Black Dynamite, and you'd be like, and you would maybe not recognize this one. Also, like you could watch an Ed Wood and you could watch Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, and you were like, probably there's some hints in there, but you could maybe be excused for not recognizing right away that it is actually a movie made in 2001. But to me, it gets so flat so quickly, and it has no new jokes so quickly, and it leans so hard on the script being overwritten or underwritten, or the alien people being awkward in a ways that don't make sense. Like it just stops having anything refreshing so early into the movie that of these movies, this is the most one-trick pony.
Yeah. It maybe wanted to be a short film more than any of the other ones. Like maybe possibly. At 20 minutes, we'd be like, yes, Chef's Kiss. But
at 20 minutes, this would have been one of my favorite on the list.
Right.
Its sense of humor does. I promise, it aligns with my sense of humor. Like I do enjoy like the first riff when you first meet the characters, and he's talking about how he's a scientist. It's like one line where he goes, well, I don't believe in anything because I'm a scientist. And it's like, that's just funny. It's like, it's not making a comment on anything. It's just funny. And like they're clearly do parodies. And I will say, like, I laughed throughout the movie. It's not that I was like, oh, this movie stops, like, it's just miss after a while. Like, it does have new or different jokes enough that, like, I did catch myself smiling or chuckling all the way through to the credits. But in terms of, like, that's not enough glue for me to capture it. I almost wonder if the movie, as a full-length movie, would have done better if the two, I don't know if you call them the main characters, but if the husband and wife just were straight characters, like if they were the ones that are like, they were like a mirror to how weird everyone else is.
Right.
That maybe could have given it a little bit of oomph for me. But there was a point where I just got incredibly de-invested in the story. Like, you're talking about Hundreds of Beavers and how, like, at some point you know what's coming. Like, there's, I'd say, zero surprises in The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. And it just, yeah,
this aesthetic is not just
what they're doing.
It's not just 60s horror. It's cheap, bad 60s horror that they're going for. And they're
really
razor
specifically,
focused
I'd
on
say Ed Wood.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and that's a good production thing. But those pregnant pauses do go on too long. And those performances are, like, lived in and too self-aware. And, like, it's exactly right. It's the kind of movie that would be selected by Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Riff Tracks to be made fun of, but they're like making the thing to make fun of.
They're not there already.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, sitting in the seats of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 people are the creators and actors of this film.
There you go. So, yeah, I think its preciousness is sort of its strength and its flaw, because this will be really funny to a real small segment of society. There's this sliver group that's like, oh, I love a really terrible 60s horror movie, and this guy gets it. He gets it. Apparently they funded a sequel, The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra Returns, which I have never seen, but my guess is it's the same thing. It is this same joke being told for another 90 minutes.
There is another film in this set that I found out had a sequel or spiritual successor made after it. And I'm going to see one of those, and it's not the sequel to Skeleton of Cadavra.
Again, I'm not mad at it, but I do think, I will concede that I'm finished with the movie before the movie is finished with me. Like, that is a true thing of it. But I do think, like, the actors are deep enough into it that they are playing not just the character, but the actor playing the character. I watched a little documentary.
Which isn't easy to do.
No, it's layered. But I watched a documentary on the DVD that they provided, and he was like, yeah, I had this whole backstory from my actor guy who really believes that this is the role that's going to make him in Hollywood, getting this, like, featured role as an alien conqueror, and that he's super excited about it, and that's sort of the engine driving his performance. And, like, I as a theater nerd, and we'll be talking about this in future movies we review today, it kind of spoke to that part of me too, that, like, I could make a meal out of a performance like that, and not everybody will get or appreciate it, but for me, I don't know, it says something. It's very specific in what it wants to do and who it entertains, and I think it's good at that, but that's 2 out of 10 people, you know.
Unless you want me to really trash it, I think.
That's all you have good enough?
Maybe not really trash it, but I don't have much more to say. It's that,
Animala,
you said it.
The woman who is all of the different creatures from the woods formed together to create this creation, Animala, and she does this really groovy 60s dance. I don't know. Yes. She really added something to the movie for me. I'm
going to say, it was unfortunate that this was the movie that wasn't as horny as all the other movies.
Right?
That we had Animala and maybe not an R rating to go with her.
I mean, it still had that, you know, counterculture 60s shake to it, and, like, the needless dance sequence. But again, so awkward and yet strangely perfect. And that's kind of how I feel about the movie, while understanding
one comment.
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone. I do think, final thought, kind of detached from everything else he was saying, I think the best character in this movie is the skeleton, as it turns out. Like, I think the skeleton has the best finger on the pulse of the movie out of all the characters. There's a couple times where the skeleton feels done with the scene in the same way that I did, and I feel like if there was more stuff like that, I would have been much more on board with it.
Yeah. I recently reviewed The House on Haunted Hill, the Vincent Price original. Apparently, once upon a time in horror movies, skeletons were quite frightening. That time has sadly passed. My 5-year-old knows what a skeleton is. Yeah. This movie's fake, Dad.
What is it you're not telling me? I would have gotten you out. I still would.
You can never really get out of Berlin.
You've seen what one bomb can do to a city. That's the future. Future of mankind's in our hands.
She's playing you, Jake. You have no idea what you're dealing with.
Who got to you? I want to know.
You find that girl. We'd like to talk to her. Get out now. Go. Before you get hurt.
Let's not forget that we are fighting for peace and for the welfare of mankind.
I'm a big fan of Steven Soderbergh. He takes big swings, he takes risks, and he makes good movies that a lot of people just don't get around to seeing. Have you seen Logan Lucky?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good movie, but nobody watched it.
I love Logan Lucky.
Yeah, Black Book. It's a really good movie, but nobody watched it. He's done a couple movies that he shot on like iPhone. One was Unsane, and the other was Presence, a ghost movie. He will
outpace me. I saw Logan Lucky, and that was my claim to fame for knowing this stuff.
Sweet. But my point is, he's been doing great work since the early 90s. He's never stopped doing interesting work. People have just been paying less attention to him. I think that The Good German sits as a hard lesson for him, that when you're doing one of your experimental things like the Girlfriend Experience or anything like that, you shoot that digitally for in 10 days for a few $100,000. Because when you spend $20 million and you occupy, George Clooney and Cate Blanchett and all of these big heavy hitters of Hollywood, to shoot on a back lot of the Hollywood studios in order to be, 100% to period, in order to scratch this itch you have for this 1940s noir filmmaker who was never able to make his movies as hard as he wanted to, and what would one of those movies look like? That was his goal, and I'm pretty sure he was successful at it. I'm not as familiar with these noir films that he's trying to emulate, so, somebody who's much more of a film historian was probably going to get a lot more than I did out of it. But I understand why what he's doing and why he's doing it. But it was a mistake to spend this much money on it, because it bombed hard, and it kind of sort of put an end to the pretty long leash that Hollywood had been giving him for some time. He could still do his experiments, but they were now going shot digitally, direct to video, and we'll leave Clooney to, other projects. It's interesting for me because I think for me it falls somewhere in the middle of his category of movies, and that I get that it's interesting. I know what he's going for. I get what he's after, but it's maybe more interesting than good to me. I think the worst Soderbergh film is still going to be interesting. There's going to be a conversation worth having about it. But the things that I think Soderbergh thinks are the benefits of the movie, locking it into the full frame, giving it that old-timey movie sort of vibe, but then having these shocking bursts of violence in it that seem to be rule-breaking for this world. That gives those moments more impact, but that is the thing that your movie's doing. And we sort of said with the other movies, it's like one joke, and once we've heard the joke, it's sort of that same joke for the whole movie. It's not a joke in this case, it's a vibe. But it's that one vibe, and it rides it throughout the movie. And because I am not a big film historian when at least it comes to movies before 1950, I am not picking up a lot of what's being put down here. And I think that might keep me at arm's reach. I appreciate that, Cate Blanchett and George Clooney are actually giving affected performances to period too. It's not even they're not just doing their typical movie star roles. They're playing it as it would be played in 1944. But again, I'm much more paying attention to the aesthetic than to the story, which is why I was saying before we were recording, I was like reading synopsises to make sure I was clear on the plot points, because that's not what my mind was busy with while I was watching The Good German, which I think might be kind of a problem. I don't hate the movie, I respect the movie, but I think I want to like the movie more than I do. Where did you land on The Good German?
First of all, and I don't know which movie's coming up next, but I'm surprised this is the one that you needed to be like, hey, I need to get integrated to make sure. I was saving my wikiing and looking up discussions of the movie for a different film on this list.
Right.
For The Good German, it's interesting because I feel like, honestly, like probably the biggest problem with it, both in this list and just as a Soderbergh movie, it is safe. It's very safe, and I think that part of that adds to the monotony. I think that it's the thing that I found fascinating in it was not any of the structure or the aesthetic or even the time period, although I think a lot of those did have something to say. But the thing that I thought was kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say unique. There have been, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of movies made at this point. Good luck finding something totally unique. But this movie is a mystery movie that is not about a mystery. It's about the mystery of not having answers, because everyone in this movie, I guess not quite the Tobey Maguire character, but essentially you go through this whole movie and everyone but the George Clooney character basically has the puzzle. They're all like, they don't literally have all the answers because there's a bit of a manhunt that this is all surrounding, that the plot surrounds, but everyone knows like what the deal is, what's happening, what's going on, except for George Clooney, but it's affecting him because he's attached to the Cate Blanchett character. And so I thought it was like for me, the pull was that framing of being with this character that doesn't know when everyone else clearly knows. And they're just, because of politics, because of keeping things close to the vest, because of manipulation, they just aren't willing to part with the information. So he needs to get it himself, even though it's there. It's not a case of like, oh, we don't know how they broke into the bank, or we don't know why this political figure was assassinated. We, as everyone else that isn't George Clooney, does know. Cate Blanchett knows, all of the Germans know, all of the Americans know, all of the Russians know. Just George Clooney doesn't know. And I thought that was interesting. But as like a story, it's pretty by the numbers. And it's not like you're looking at it from a film history point of view, and I was looking at it a little bit more of like not every movie needs to shock and surprise me necessarily, but I find it hard to both praise and condemn because it is a very, at the end of the day, straightforward film with a slightly, like there aren't a lot of these good old modern cinema movies, so it's unique on that front. But it's just like you've seen this movie before, more or less.
The obvious corollary, I think, is Casablanca, and like,
yes,
it's a former flame. He's protecting her for reasons that not even he himself fully understands. But just that, like, this is what you're supposed to do. But she has, I know it's Cate Blanchett and she's beautiful, but she has trouble written right across her forehead. But he still has to be the you know, heroic knightly character to make things right, even though maybe she isn't all that. Maybe she is the exact noir vixen that she looks like. They say, like, she did what she needed to do to survive the war, and it's sort of implied that means prostitution. But I think that the movie's implying it means a lot more than that. That she wasn't, quote, the good German that looked the other way while all the evil was going on.
Entirely not. It spelled it out at the end. Even so, and maybe this says more about me and my cynicism as I've gotten older. When it was revealed what she had done, I kind of wish it was worse. Like, I kind of wish it made me feel icky for George Clooney's behalf. Like, it's certainly not great. It's kind of like I went to see 12 Years a Slave in the theater with a friend who had no exposure to like Roots or any of the other media about slavery, and it was shocking. But she was like, "I can't believe," and I was like, "I can believe it. I've seen Roots." And this kind of feels that like there's what's it? The Reader with Kate Winslet.
Right.
There's like there's just so much. There's so much Holocaust stuff out there, and it punches so hard that when she was like, I sold the people out in order to survive. You kind of like, that's not great. I don't like you for it, but.
Did you find that the sort of shocking sort of Tobey Maguire having some doggy-style sex or like just the visceral violence being shown on screen, did that break the spell for you? Did it like feel like wrong within the aesthetic somehow?
The funny thing is I did have a thought about that, and that was when I had the thought like, I cut out the soft porn film, and like all of these movies are just dirty. I think it was kind of anachronistic to the rest of the movie because like there's a scene later on which is weird because again we have seen in this movie right from the beginning complete raw, like you said, doggy style sex with Tobey Maguire. And there's a scene later on where George Clooney is interviewing a different prostitute, and she's like starting to change her clothes, and it feels salacious for some reason, even though the movie's exposed to us to much worse. So, like, I don't think that it didn't pull me out of the movie, but it didn't feel of a piece with the rest of the movie, let alone the genre.
It just feels like Soderbergh was saying, like, this guy was having, his films censored. They weren't as tough as they needed to be or could be. But seeing it as tough as it could be, I don't think it would have worked in that time period. It would have just been too far over the line, I think. Like, even now...
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Like, yes. Like, they would have labeled it an X-rated movie if it had come out in the 40s.
It might still be talked about because of how salacious it was, but I don't think it would have been successful. I don't think it would have broken new ground or barriers for film. Again, it's an interesting experiment, but it's an interesting, expensive experiment, Mr. Soderbergh.
Yeah. It's a perfectly fine movie. Like, I would struggle to... Like, if someone was interested in watching this movie, I wouldn't caution them against it.
Nope.
If there's anything about it, if they like George Clooney, if they like World War II stuff, if they like if there was something about this movie that was drawing someone to it, they're probably right.
Yeah.
It has a lot of George Clooney. It has a lot of that old-time aesthetic. It has a lot of intrigue. Like, it has a lot of this stuff. It doesn't do anything new with any of them.
Yeah, that is a rear projection in the back of the car like they used to do it.
Yes.
And, like, yes, we get it. We get why it's there. We see that it's there, but, like, that's how we used to make movies. We don't do that anymore, and there's a reason. The same thing with the way they shoot it. Like, there's always the close-up, the wide shot, and then, like, the sort of direct on. Every scene has
the direct on where like the lighting changes a little bit because they're considering, because they have very limited film and they're like, we need to have this close up really count, so we're gonna do a window across the face or stuff like that. Like all that is.
But they aesthetically repeat that authentically, which is how it would have been made. But they repeat it so much that it becomes a little bit wearisome. It's just like, yeah, I understand what you're doing, Soderbergh, but I wish I was paying more attention to the story than these extreme close-ups.
Yes.
But like I've said before and will say again, the worst Soderbergh movie is still worth a watch and a conversation. And I would say this is probably somewhere in the middle of his catalog. So, good enough?
That's certainly where I land.
Ooh.
Keeping secrets, are you?
No, sir.
Why don't you spill your beans? Why don't you spill your beans? Why don't you spill your beans? How long have we been on this rock? 5 weeks? 2 days? Help me to recollect.
Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse. Of course, he had blown the doors off the indie horror community with The Witch, and everybody wanted to be in his business, see what he did next. They gave him a budget with The Northmen, but people just didn't show up for it. So he went crawling back to the arty fart house. Literally. There's a lot of discussion of farts in this movie. I wasn't just saying art fart house for the fun of saying art fart house. Yes, Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson play lighthouse workers, or are they? Identity is a big part of this. And the movie is shot in a very specific way, full frame, claustrophobic, harsh black and white, and it's got this, maritime dialect that just sounds old-timey. I'm sure it's very genuine, but it almost hits your ears like it's a Shakespearean play or something like this. It reminds me of doing black box theater in the late 90s as a drama student with a very supportive audience where, you can pound your chest and tear your shirt and really bare your soul on stage to a supportive audience. The Lighthouse is a movie that I respect, I think, more than I like. I respect how much dedicated the actors were to Eggers' vision, and I respect the sort of consistent bleakness and absurdity that was being put into the story, and that it feels, in a word, way more like an absurdist play than like a psychological horror film. I think for me where it runs into problems is, does it actually mean anything when all is said and done? I mean, we touch on these images and ideas of Sisyphean myths and torture and identity and falseness and power dynamics between two men who are virtually imprisoned together. But I don't know that the movie ever settles on any one thing that it's about. I think it's about its vibe. I think it's about its, hungry performances. I think it's about its reckless identity and the fact that it doesn't care what you think about it. And I can respect that. But as I'm watching it, what do I take from it? What kind of meal am I taking in? Do I get joy from it? And that's the thing I wrestle with this one. The Northman didn't 100% work for me, but I got what he was going for, This one is tough. It's like, it's like really confronting theater, where you walk away kind of thinking about it and it kind of haunts your thoughts. But when people ask you what you think of it, what do you think of The Lighthouse? I'm like, I don't know. It was interesting. I am a fan of this director. Like, I will, watch his next project, and he's going to do a werewolf movie apparently next, and sign me up for that. I do think he has a good sort of aesthetic vibe, and he really, really loves period movies, so that most of his films feel like they could have been made at any time and any place. Like, they're so set in the world that they're set in that you almost believe they were filmed there. So he has a great visual presence and he has a real artistic style. But I do think, emotionally, he kind of has me at a distance here. Am I full of shit?
This was the movie that I walked away from it saying, wait, did I miss something? This movie was so raved about when it came out, and people that I generally align with their tastes. They rated it very highly. It got so many 10 out of 10s all across the circuit. And when you had proposed this one as one of the substitutes, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, right. I can finally watch this movie. It's been on my movie bucket list for a while. And I walked away from it, and I think I felt the exact same thing, where I was like, I'm not here to tell the world. I'm not it's not like Les Mis, where I'm like, I'm invested in people understanding that this is not as good as it could be.
Yes.
It's a well done movie. God bless the actors. The cinematography is great. And I am absolutely certain that absolutely everything in this film has intention and theming, and the theming is all over the place. It's hard to miss. And yet, I walked away from it, and I felt a little bit like my time had been wasted. And honestly, I think if almost the exact same content was in a play, I would respect it more, and I would come out buzzing a lot more. And I think a play is a much better format for something that is narratively ambiguous, I would say.
Absurd.
And
really.
and I really want to stress, I am not someone who's like, movies have to make sense. They have to have a beginning, middle, and end. There have to be rules. Like, have you seen Beau is Afraid?
I have.
That, to me, is the movie I would compare against. Did you like it?
I am not as big on Beau is Afraid, although I do understand, it's an aside, the movie is purposely trying to give you the experience of people who live virtually in a panic attack. And that's what it's trying to put you in that headspace for 3 hours. So the movie is making a point of making you uncomfortable. So that's what I'm talking about.
Beau is Afraid is not on this list, but it is the movie that I would compare as like, this is a movie, and like, I walked away from it and like, it's maybe my least favorite Ari Aster film. Like, I don't love it, but I went away and I respected it, and I did take something away from it, and it was like, I didn't regret my time with it. And that movie doesn't make any fucking sense. So like, this movie, like, there's like Prometheus and Sisyphean things. There's like a father-son relationship, and there's like, I don't know, there's like maybe some implication that the Willem Dafoe character is imagined or not real, or something like, there's something like that.
Well,
maybe?
And that's the thing. You can interpret it in so many ways. The Willem Dafoe's character's personality swings so violently that you can almost believe that he's not real, or he's a ghost or a facet of Robert Pattinson's personality. But then we find all this business about Robert Pattinson maybe not being true to his identity of who he is, and actually legitimately not knowing a lot about the job that he's supposed to be there to do. And it is an important job. You got to keep that light lit. But the fact that we can sit here having seen the movie more than once and not know that answer. I remember talking to Lee Beckman about the movie, and he was like, so what do you think that he saw when he finally looked into the light and started screaming? And I was like, I don't know, it was like symbolic of his coming madness, if that makes any sense. And Lee responded,
he saw the same thing that Eve tasted when she ate the apple.
That's right. But yeah, he just like, that doesn't really make sense. And I'm like, no, it kind of doesn't. But the movie needed a punchy, ending, and I guess that was that. There's a William Friedkin movie with Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd, and they're in this apartment, and they think that there's bugs in there. Oh, what the fuck was it called? It'll jump into my head at a later date, but it has the same problem in that that one was literally based off of a stage play, and I honestly think if we're in a little black box theater watching these actors pour their hearts out on stage, I'm gonna stand and clap for them and be like, wow, they really went there. As a movie, if it means everything and nothing, if it means whatever you want it to mean, if it enters this, I'm sorry to say it, this Lynchian groundwork where, you figure it out, man. Figure it out and it'll be great for you. I start to wonder how authentic that really is. That's when the farty kind of overtakes the arty a little bit for me. But am I going to sit here and say that Willem Dafoe does a bad job in this movie? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. And again, I still haven't seen the Twilight movies, but from what I've seen, Robert Pattinson's a decent actor in the movies that I have seen him in.
I've also not watched the Twilight movies. Robert Pattinson batting 1,000 for me.
That's right. So maybe we should do a podcast on Twilight one of these times. I can.
Oh yeah, maybe that'll be the thing that'll really take me to task for saying that this movie might have disrespected my time as watching all the Twilight movies. I don't like. It's not. I struggle with this movie because it's always tough when you have a huge delta between well-made and good movie, and I don't think that this is a very particularly good movie, even though I would argue that pretty much every aspect of it is incredibly well made.
Canadian made too. I like to shout out Canadian made productions.
10 out of 10. I was joking. This movie is perfect. I can't think of a single flaw with it. It's better than anything not made in Canada. That's right. So there's that.
By mere nature of it being made in Canada. No, it's vibe and its historicity is one of its strongest features, and I do think that that's what Eggers definitely brings to it. And like, I like that you're making a movie that's a little bit obtuse and that it's not for everyone and knows it's not for everyone, and that, yeah, it means what you want it to mean. But it's a double-edged sword. Like I said, I'll finish where I started. I can respect the movie, but that maybe isn't the same thing as liking it.
Agreed.
I am declaring war on anybody who sells drugs in our community.
But Black Dynamite, I sell drugs to the community. He killed my best dealer. I want him dead now.
So if you crave satisfaction, then dig this action. Guaranteed to put your ass in traction. Black, stack, attack, and match. Backtrack, slapjack, boot black, flashback, ramsack, jam pack, and still coming back.
See where I'm coming from, you jive mother.
Black Dynamite, starring all-star running back Ferrante Jones, fashion model Tambula Takar, William T. Michelson, Ronnie Sinatra, Little Tiny Tibbs, Junebug, Bo Willie Peters, and me, that bad bullhorn. Black Dynamite! Filled with Cinemaphonic Quattro Vision, rated R.
That's because that's who it is.
Scott Saunders directed this movie called Black Dynamite, and boy, it definitely knows where it came from. This is a loving satire of the blaxploitation movies of the late 60s and the 70s. I did a whole episode dedicated to blaxploitation, watched the Shaft trilogy and a few other ones, Blackula, and I feel like I was well primed for this movie. And I like the pureness of the vision, and I like that they love blaxploitation, warts and all. Like, they know that some of the acting is terrible. They know that some of the filmmaking is amateurish. They know that some of the editing is desperate. And they work that into their movie for laughs with purpose. I mean, maybe the third or fourth time you spot a boom mite, you're like, okay, we get it. But it's also under 90 minutes. It's got a clean story that's being told. You know, Black Dynamite's half-brother has been killed. And I like that for whatever reason he spoke in like Shakespearean English before he was shot. And everybody knows, from the cops to the gangsters and bangers on the streets, that it's going to be hell and it's going to be blood rain until the guilty party is found. And the movie's possessed of a great amount of waka chicka, a great amount of self-awareness, exploitation, just like the movies that they're aping had. And it's kind of smugly impressed with itself in a way that I would usually be turned off by a movie. But there is something infectious about Black Dynamite. Like, it knows how awesome and goofy and stupid it is, and it wants you to be part of that vibe. And I gave into it. If you fight this movie, maybe you'll win. But I just decided to go into the muscly arms of Black Dynamite and just trust him to take me on this ride. And I really think he mostly did. Yeah, there's a sameness to the scenes, and like we've talked about, maybe it's a one-joke premise. But in this case, it's a pretty funny joke. At least I thought. Am I crazy? Were you able to get into Black Dynamite?
Oh, yeah, I was able to get into Black Dynamite. This movie's fantastic. No, I'll say, so first things first, just in terms of the theming of this episode, I think this movie far and away does the best at fitting into the genre that it is lovely satirizing. Like, there is one single effect that I can think of in the movie that gives away, is like, okay, that's digital fire.
Okay.
Pretty much everything else, you could put literally go back in time and just slip this onto a shelf, and no one's gonna be like, whoa, how did a movie from the year of our Lord 2009 get here on this shelf in the year 1970? Like, no one, they just accept it. It is so cleanly part of that aesthetic, part of the filmmaking, and it's really rough, I would say, for the Lost Skeleton of Cadavra to be on the same list as Black Dynamite, because Black Dynamite succeeds at its craft so much more. It seems so weird for me to say this about a movie that's an hour and 24 minutes, but I would still cut stuff from it. It still gets samey. There's still a point where, like, you know, this is the thing, like, you're talking about how for the good German, like, okay, things were rear projected. We don't do that anymore for a reason. We don't need movies to have nonstop kung fu for a reason, because just watching someone punch another person isn't enough anymore, and that's kind of where I think it falls down a little bit. Personally, my editing note would be there's a point at the end of the movie, near the end of the movie, where they go warehouse and it kind of sets them off on this thing, and then after that they go to a manufacturing facility, and I kind of wish those two scenes were squished together. I feel like that would have helped the pacing. I don't even know that you necessarily need a shorter movie, but they kind of do the same thing twice in the story, and that's effectively my single complaint about it. I was done with it when it was done, but this movie is so funny and so well done and so loving, and I think the thing is, like, yeah, the joke overall is kind of the same. I think it has a little bit more to work with than some of the other movies that are hitting the same note over and over again. There is so much stuff in this movie, and I also found myself getting sucked into it. Like, I'm not remembering that it's a satire. I'm like, laughing at it and laughing with it are the same thing.
Right.
There's, like, it kind of reminds me, like, when you watch Star Wars, whenever someone's getting force choked, you kind of have to remind yourself that they're not actually getting force choked. You know what I mean? Like, you just, like, you see the invisible force. You're like, if you sit and think, you're like, hey, wait, that's just a person pretending to get choked. But it doesn't, like, it doesn't feel right mentally because it looks so seamless. And I feel like so much of this movie is that for this blaxploitation genre is like, you're like, right, no, these are people pretending to make a blaxploitation, pretending to be bad actors, pretending to be in this wacky world. I mean, you have to remind yourself because they fit into it so bad. And yet they also constantly use that as a vehicle for the humor. There's a scene, there's a moment where Black Dynamite is at some kind of brothel and he's flirting with the love interest in the movie, and then some lady that he's had some relationship with in the past comes in and finishes his sentence to, like, she's trying to be cute at him of like, oh yeah, that's his pickup line is this. And Black Dynamite gets so angry at her, he flies off the hand and he threatens to send her back to some pimp that was, like, actually cruel. And everyone's like, whoa. And he's, like, taking a moment. But then the actress is, then the next line from the love interest is, Black Dynamite, there's something about you that makes me feel like I can trust you.
Yes.
You gotta believe that that's just the next line in the script. But they also had this real in-world moment where Black Dynamite freaked out at this lady.
But even when they lose, they win, right? Like, when the pause goes on for too long. And I remember noticing this in the blaxploitation movies I watched. Like, the establishing shots would be weirdly desperate. Like, they were shooting outside without a permit somehow, and so they were, like, glazing over top of all these faces, trying to find the actual person they were supposed to be shooting. Or when a car gets run off the road, how it would always explode during the drop. Like, it wouldn't crash and then explode, but while it was in the air, it would explode. There's something really specific about these decisions. And even though they're very specific, and this is something that I don't think Last Skeleton of Cadavra pulls off, if you're not aware of the movies they're aping, Black Dynamite is still funny and ridiculous on its own merits. You don't need to have watched those movies as a prerequisite. Whereas I think with Last Skeleton of Cadavra, you do need to have watched some of those old shitty 60s movies to understand what they're going for. This movie is just so ridiculous and goofy and funny on its face that, like, you don't need that primer. I also like that Michael J. White is the lead character in this, and just this unsung guy in Hollywood. He's usually like a second or third tier character in action movies, does a lot of stunt work. He was Spawn, you know, and you can tell he's super happy to be doing this movie. He's super invested in making this movie as good and as silly and as funny as he can possibly make it. And yeah, I don't know. It's a good moment for him in his career, you know. It would just be suck if everyone knew him as Spawn.
Yeah, or the is he the guy that the Joker makes the pencil disappear
That's
in
right.
The Dark Knight?
That's right.
Yeah, like, Not that that's not also a good get if you're trying to get acting jobs, but like, yeah, it's the thing about this, and again, it's such a tough compare with the Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, is that this was also a passion project. It was, but because it was so much more successful, and I mean just like artistically, the passion project gives back in equal measure.
Yeah.
It's so this movie is so funny. It is so funny. There was my wife and I were like I love Hundreds of Beavers, and to me that is the next funniest movie on this list. Not that it's like a string of comedies, so easy compare, but not only did I have the biggest laughs with this movie, I had maybe bigger laughs than I kind of remember having with almost any movie, even though I've also seen this movie multiple times. There's something absolutely hysterical about a fight scene where someone clearly hits the other actor, or again, everyone's acting that they're acting, but it hits the other actor for real, and you say desperate editing. I'm like, hey, what?
Keep going.
They cut to a different person.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, it just takes so much heart and so much energy, and it pulls it off. And like I stand by every time I watch Black Dynamite. I get to that third act and I'm like, okay, all right, okay. It's not a perfect film, but it is especially for those first 2/3. But like the stuff it exceeds at, it overperforms. It really overperforms with how well it is both a love letter and satire and genuinely funny in its own right with its own sense of humor without stepping on the toes of those other two things. It is like an astonishingly well done movie.
And for this sort of aesthetic, a comedy that's embracing the sort of goofiness of the past, but with love, I will take this way over any Austin Power movie, It comes from a more authentic place, I feel like. And like I say, the fact that even when it loses and it wins, like if he accidentally really hits a guy, that's funny because they stop for a second. But it's also funny when he clearly came nowhere near to hitting that guy, but they just keep going to. Like, it works. And the joy is infectious. It's not smug about what it's doing in any way. It's like, it wants you to be pleased. Well, it's hard to resent a movie that just wants to put a smile on your face and keep it there.
100%. It's I'm trying to think of something more meaningful to say other than this movie is really good and funny. But this movie is really good and it is really funny.
I guess fair warning, it does play in the same exploitation sort of sex and violence that the blaxploitation movies would have had. So if you're going to be rubbed the wrong way by, women being mistreated or, over the top violence for the sake of over top violence, that's par for the course. It would be like going into a Friday the 13th movie saying, but I don't want to see anyone get killed. Okay? Like, no, just know where you are, people.
100%, yes.
True. Thank you so much for doing this, retro, good old modern cinema episode. Was a good idea for an episode. It also had quite a bit more range in it. I guess I could have picked 6 comedies or we could have picked 6 serious ones, but I think they were all within the boundaries that we set here. And Yeah, there were things that I liked and things that I disliked, but I'm not raging against it. Nothing felt like homework that I didn't want to do. I'm curious, what was your least favorite of these 6 picks and why?
I'll say this, when I watched The Lighthouse, I was convinced it was going to be at the bottom.
Oh, wow, okay.
But then I watched The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra and another movie, which was my second. Anyway, The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra is my least favorite. I honestly do understand, and I would like to think that I appreciate what they were doing with this satire, but it really has the one joke, and like you said, if it was 20 minutes, brilliant, amazing. But even for something that is actually kind of generally aligned with my sense of humor and how I like to see things kind of get roasted, it just didn't provide enough new or interesting or dynamic to make me feel like my time had been respected. And like I would have to be all the way into that category of I enjoy Ed Wood. I need to say some other director from this era that's not Ed Wood in order to claim my bona fides. But the thing is that, like, I don't like those movies. I do like Mystery Science Theater 3000. Right. And I said earlier, like, unfortunately this movie blocks out by it's kind of like it's trying to roast something that almost can't be roasted, because a lot of the stuff that gives the character of those early sci-fi movies is the earnestness in which they're trying to make a good movie. Yes. And hearing the anecdote you had about that being like a character direction for them, like, it seems like they were coming from the right place. But like I said, I want to see the Mystery Science Theater guys dig on this movie, and instead this movie is in this space where they would sit.
The problem is, how do you make fun of a movie that essentially makes fun of itself, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it making fun of itself, I think it just didn't do in nearly as good a way as the most direct comparison, which is Black Dynamite on this list. Sure. This feels to me like this is how you do this not wrong, or sorry, not right. Not to say that it isn't done earnestly or from a genuine place. Or like clearly they had a vision. I don't want to say that it's like creatively bankrupt or anything like that, but I just don't feel like the pieces came together to make a whole meal. That's kind of it. It's just like a little too much pasta in this dish would be my my conclusion on it.
All right, what's number 5?
Again, I thought that this was going to be The Lighthouse, but then I watched Space Station 76, and it's like I'm trying to think of a different way to wrap this all up than just going over the review again. But it really is just, it doesn't get all the way. It just doesn't. Narratively, character-wise, there's no payoff. This movie is just like, it's kind of frustrating because it has the pieces. It has the actors. It has, like, the set design is all there. They make use of what they have in a way that tells me that this movie could have been good. And I always get frustrated when the story is the weak point, because good writing is free. Not everyone can write well, but it's not like when you see a movie and you're like, they couldn't afford, like we were just talking about the blaxploitation stuff, where it's like, okay, you didn't have a permit to film here. You didn't have you needed to get this shot. Like even Game of Thrones, for all its budget, had moments where it's like, shoot, we have this spot for this evening and the sun is going down and we need to see that character's head come off. It happens. This movie didn't fail for any of those outside reasons. There was some lack of vision here, in the story side specifically, that just didn't, like, it just felt like the sets came and they brought their stuff, and the it's like a big old potluck, and the story was supposed to bring the drinks and the buns for the hamburgers, and it didn't. And everyone's like, well, great, we have these great hamburger patties, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a barbecue anymore.
That's have food, but we don't have a meal.
Yes. I just, it's not bad. It's not bad. It is, I think, maybe the most disappointing movie in this list, I would say, from where it could be to where it ended up.
Fair. So I'm going to guess that
the Lighthouse.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm guessing the Lighthouse finally made its way to fourth place.
Oh, sorry, yeah, fourth. Yeah, the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse. Again, can't say anything I haven't said already. I bet I could if I really tried. This movie is just a little too pretentious. It's just a little too. You don't need to be for everyone, but I think I would have appreciated it being a little bit more for anyone. It's again, like there are movies that are ambiguous that I appreciate, and there's movies that like don't make sense or don't have or very barely have an internal consistency that make you feel off kilter. And again, my closest immediate thought would be Beau is Afraid as a comparison. It is not that this style of storytelling is wrong. It is that they didn't make use of the cinema format, again, specifically on the story end of things. Like, there is a scene in that movie where
Willem Dafoe is giving you cut out just a
soliloquy while being buried alive.
That's right.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe is giving us a little bit while being buried alive in real time. And, like, I don't know, did he actually get, like, dirt on it? I don't know what is going on there, because it seems like a horrific thing to do to anyone, let alone Mr. Dafoe. But he's just sitting there getting covered with dirt, and to the point where, like, his mouth starts almost looking like a Muppet. Like, it's like his big beard is just taking on the shape of all this dirt, and he's still going, and he's not, like he's wincing and stuff, but it's not affecting the performance. And stuff like that is so good. And then you have to ask, to what end? And
what
I guess
does
specifically
it mean?
for that soliloquy, yeah, to that end is to again explain there's the theming of like Prometheus and his fire and all that stuff. But you get to the end of it, and I'm like, I don't know that I feel like maybe sometimes the journey is a little bit about the destination, maybe just a little bit. And this movie didn't get to a destination, I would argue.
It goes to my David Lynch thing. I don't have to know what everything means, but I have to believe that you know what everything means. And when I don't believe that, I get suspicious.
Entirely. I think that there was, like I said, I think there was intentionality behind everything, but I don't think there was a reason behind everything, at least on a story front.
Right. So into third place then.
Into third place is Black. I'm kidding. No, it's The Good German. This movie is like it's definition of middle of the road, which is like maybe the most I could damn it for having such a stacked director and cast.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I have the least to say about. It's a fine movie. It's fine. It's good. It's okay. There's interesting stuff about it. There's stuff that's like not interesting. There's things that where, like I was saying, like maybe stakes should feel a little bit different for a modern movie than they would for a movie from the 1930s, 1940s. It's fine. No one is a bad actor. No one is a great actor. I mean, like, there's a lot of great actors, but like, there's no acting that's like distractingly good or distractingly bad. There's some set pieces that are incredibly interesting, but there's nothing about it where you're like, you need to watch this movie because of the scene on the Postradam or the scene in this, or you need to see there's a death scene. Like, we did a while ago a movie called King of the Ants, and that movie is like production-wise so incredibly unspectacular, and yet there is a death scene in that movie that is like one of the best done, most uncomfortable death scenes I've seen in a movie. And The Good German has nothing along those lines. And I'm not saying that every single movie needs to be number one at something, but I think every single movie should have something noteworthy about it. And this movie has stuff that you can, like, it has properties, it has stuff that you could say about it, you can classify it, but it doesn't have anything that's going to stick with me in, like, I'd say a year, let alone, like, a week.
Yeah. Fair. Which brings us to the top two.
This is so tough. Honestly, like, can we just say that, like, the top two are tied? With a little bit of, I think that this is where this becomes my list.
Sure.
Black Dynamite for me is number 2. I was going to say I have almost nothing bad to say about it, but I do have some stuff that I find detract from the movie. I do. But I don't feel like despite my main argument being that the movie is too long,
right. I
don't feel like this movie wastes my time in any way. And if that can make sense, let it. But I'm so happy about this movie. I love every time I watch it. I don't necessarily catch something new, but I might appreciate stuff a little bit deeper. I think it is genuinely hilarious. I think that it is honestly an artistic masterpiece. Like we were saying, threading those needles of we're paying homage, we're satiring, we're recreating the filmmaking style, even if they're not using the exact same techniques. The thing that gets in front of your eyes feels so of the time. We also have like our own tone and our own style of humor that comes in a way that you wouldn't necessarily see in blaxploitation films, and yet all that stuff lives so harmoniously. And I think that is absolutely, like, it's worthy of so much praise and so much admiration, and it's just a straight enjoyable flick. It's so enjoyable. It's so good. Like you said, look, if you're gonna get icky about like misogyny for humor's sake or like anything like that, or like, I don't know, too much kung fu, like, sure, it's not literally a movie for everyone, but I think that if there's any part of you that will appreciate this movie, you will 100% appreciate it to a large degree.
Yeah. No, it's very sure-footed.
Yes, entirely. Hundreds of Beavers is such a good movie. and the thing that puts it at number 1 for me, other than like it being the thing that spawned this list, the thing that puts it at number 1 for me over Black Dynamite, and like, catch me on a different day and I could flip them. They're good in different ways, and almost equally so. But I haven't seen a movie. And so, like, a lot of these movies I was criticizing, like, oh, what's new? What's different? What's the pull? And every part of this movie is itself. It is so uniquely Hundreds of Beavers. And yes, there is some Buster Keaton stuff, and there's Looney Tunes stuff, and there's, there's old, I don't know, like Interland Who's Who type thing. Like, you can see where there's like video game inspirations. You can see where the inspirations all come. And yet when it gets stirred into that pot, the only thing, like, you don't break this down into its component parts. Hundreds of Beavers is just Hundreds of Beavers. There is not another movie that I know of that is like it. There is not. It's its own type of thing. It is. I think the payoff at the end of that movie, maybe this is where the difference is. Like, for me, the parts that I would cut out of Hundreds of Beavers are kind of towards the middle. Like, that's where the fat is. Black Dynamite slows down a little bit towards the end, and I think that leaves a worse taste in your mouth. Not that the taste of Black Dynamite is bad, but the conclusion of Hundreds of Beavers is so well earned and so ridiculous and so bonkers and so funny, and also very good. Hundreds of Beavers, like we talked about it a little bit in terms of he becomes a better trapper and he learns to deal with this stuff, but it's really underselling that like legitimate character arc that Jean Kayak goes through in this movie. Like, I've watched this movie a lot of times, and if anyone ever wants to watch Hundreds of Beavers, come on over to my place and I'll slap it on the TV. Yeah. But every time I watch it, I am kind of stunned watching the beginning of the movie and thinking about where the character ends up. In a legitimate, like, yeah, he becomes more talented and he learns the show, but he also, like, he overcomes alcoholism in the movie, and it's a big goofy movie, so it's played for laughs, but like there's like there's just like stuff like that. He goes from not being able to capture a single rabbit to just punching hundreds of beavers to death on his way to his next task. Yep. And it's just such a... And he gets there because of every piece of the movie that comes before. You know what? I don't regret that this is number 1. Hundreds of Beavers is a goddamn masterpiece. I love it. I can't recommend it enough. And if one person listens to this, one single person listens to this and watches Hundreds of Beavers, and you weren't going to, or you didn't know about it, and you watched it because of me, message Larry, and Larry, I expect you to tell me, because then my work on this earth is done.
Worthwhile. Well, unfortunately, we didn't go 6 for 6 or 0 for 6 on the list.
I was going to say, this is the list that I had the absolute least amount of idea of where you were going to land.
Right.
I've done cute things where I've tried to match your list. I've tried to guess what you were going to do while ranking my own list. I have no idea what your list is going to look like, and I'm very interested.
Well, I put Space Station 76 at the bottom, in that it was a bunch of ingredients that by themselves I liked, but I don't think went together well. I like spicy chili, I like, chocolate mint ice cream, and I like, apple cinnamon oatmeal, but they don't all go together in one bowl, I just didn't understand why these things were being put together. And, it was interesting. It wasn't necessarily boring to watch, but of all the movies, I didn't even see what they were going for in this one. It's just so. I put the Lost Skeleton of Cadavra in 5th place. I do see what they're going for, but I think that the audience for this film is narrow. But I do respect on some level the specificity of the satire that's happening here. Because I do think you could watch it and not know that it was satire and just think this was some rediscovered terrible movie from the 60s. Which means it's actually done its job fairly well. The problem is that it's just the raw entertainment value you're going to get out of this 96 minutes. It's the same thing repeated over and over again. And most of this stuff kind of makes you smile more than it makes you laugh. So, as a consequence, you feel the time. And sort of like I said, it's the kind of movie, they're making the kind of movie that would be made fun of on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Because that kind of movie would be more fun to make fun of than to actually sit through. As The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra kind of unfortunately proves to us. I also agree with you and put The Lighthouse in 4th place, although I think The Lighthouse and The Good German were the two middle chapters that were almost interchangeable to me, in that I appreciate, there's stuff to appreciate in both of these movies, but they're not amazing, and they might be overpraised because of who made them. In that respect, the movies are kind of the same. As different as they are, I kind of look at them under that same light. I think that I have more of a personal investment in Soderbergh as a filmmaker, and I see what he's going for more in The Good German, whereas The Lighthouse does feel like one of those pretentious plays that goes on for too long in some way. But that when you're in the room, seeing those actors give that performance can really shake you, can really be like, yes, this is art. This is the kind of thing that needs to get made that nobody fully appreciates. I understand the door it's knocking on, but no, I'm putting Lighthouse in 4th and The Good German in 3rd position. I will agree with you and put Black Dynamite in 2nd place. Caveat I'm dropping is Hundreds of Beavers is still fresh and new in my mind. It's still like the new discovery that I've just want to sing its praises to the world. I think it would be fair to give it 5 or 10 years and let the dust settle a little bit and then really have a harder look at which one of the movies. I think Hundreds of Beavers is just aggressively original. It's less dependent on what became before it as well, whereas Black Dynamite is very specific about what it's doing, and it's doing it perfectly. So I have so much love for both of these movies. Both of these movies will make you laugh, and I don't think you'd be wasting your time. Today, Black Dynamite number 2 and Hundreds of Beavers number 1. In the future, who knows? Because as I keep saying on Rank and Review, film criticism is nonsense.
I need to get a time machine and go back and really get you to down a little bit on Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, because we were very close.
There it is.
We came very close, and we came very close for very similar reasons, which I wouldn't have guessed. I honestly was I thought that maybe the fact that Lost Skeleton spoke more to your familiarities would have pushed it even higher still. But overall, maybe this is why this episode kind of streamed along so much. Is generally we agree. Yeah. It's I don't think, for having such range, I don't think that there is and I know The Lighthouse is a movie that's literally about interpretation, but I don't think that there is a lot of different angles to take about these movies personally. Yeah. And so here we are. Well,
you know how somebody becomes a Rank and Review champion? The same way they get to
Lee
Carnegie...
Beckman takes a break.
No, yeah. The same way you get to Carnegie Hall, man. Practice, practice, practice. You are welcome at Rank and Review at any time. It's so good to reconnect with you, brother. I appreciate you doing this. We don't have to be winners to be winners.
I got to watch hundreds of Beavers and Black Dynamite. I am a winner today.
That's right. Is there anything you want to say to the good people on the internet, or you're not podcasting anymore?
I do, actually.
Okay.
So, for anyone that was listening along, I think last time I was on Rank and Review, I had a bike store. And unfortunately, all of the Rank and Review listeners did not come together and buy enough bikes that I felt like that was a feasible thing to keep doing. So I no longer run a bike store, but I am doing a creative project that I am very excited about. And I think, honestly, this is the audience, if not just to you, to talk about it. I don't think that it's going to be what you expect. I am working on a creative writing app. I am trying to get it to closed beta this week. And it is very specifically an app designed for helping people write their stories in a way where whatever your writing style, whatever your thought process, wherever you get inspired, does not get in the way of having a parsable outline, set of characters. It's kind of hard to describe, but my goal is A, no one ever feels like they're using the app the wrong way. And B, wherever you are, like if you're about to step on the bus and you're like, oh wait, what if this character was allergic to milk? That would really tie the story together. You can whip out your phone, punch it in, and you don't have a thing that's going to get lost in a note. You don't feel like you had to slog through a bunch of menus or whatever to do it. You don't have to particularly be organized in order for the app to organize things for you. It is called Wordflow. You can check it out at wordflow.page. Currently, I am working on releasing it for Mac, iPhone, and iPad, just because those are the platforms that I'm familiar with and that I'm starting with. By the end of the year, I would like to have it on Android, and at some point I would also like to get it on Windows as well, because the goal of this app is wherever there is a writer who could maybe feel enabled in writing by using this, I want to get it in their hands. On that note, the app is and will remain completely free. It is not ad-driven. It is just a passion project of my own, made for other people that like creative writing and storytelling and narrative and all that stuff. And that is why I want it to be multi-platform. If you are a writer out there, I am hoping that I'm making the tool for you. Wordflow.page.
Sorry, say it again, brother.
Wordflow. Think of workflow, okay, but put a D where the K is.
There you go.
Wordflow.page.
Sweet, man. That's exciting. And hopefully you'll be on again and you can give us updates on where we stand.
Yeah.
All right. Well, please send some love to the wife and the child, and hopefully I will talk to you again soon. I need to get some food in me, and I need to get some sleep, I think.
All right.
And the second half of the recording went pretty seamlessly, so whatever ghost was in the machine...
Yeah, that was really... The trick was you had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Once I took care of business was taken care of, I guess.
Yes. That was good. The next hiatus will be much shorter, I promise. And honestly, if you just keep me in the rotation, I don't know obviously what I'm going to be doing for work, so I don't know what my schedule is going to be like or whatever. But if you're like, hey, need a guest, pick from these, you come get me and I'll respond.
I'll be in touch, my friend. I promise. And like I say, put a bug in Ashley's ear too. She's welcome to do an episode if she wants, but if she doesn't, I don't want to be I do not want to be a source of stress at any point to anyone.
Okay. Appreciate it. I'll make sure that she is informed but not stressed.
Perfect. Thanks a bunch, brother. And there it was, another episode of Rank and Review hits the rearview mirror. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you have any feedback, you could send it to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. The website is ranknreview.ca, and we are on YouTube. If you would look up Rank and Review on YouTube, give us a like, a subscribe, tell me how you would have ranked a given episode, give a thumbs up to a video or a review. All of these things are helpful to me. Telling your friends about the show is helpful to me. Checking out my friend Jason DeBray's podcast, The Shelf Shedding Movie Show, is helpful to me. And just whoever this voice is reaching, whoever's ears is accepting this information, thank you for being there. Thank you for supporting Rank and Review. Thank you for listening. We drop every other Wednesday.